I'm from New Jersey. Anybody here from New Jersey? Whoa, whoa. You know, they do things differently. It's a refining state. When I came here, I gotta confess, I didn't know how to do the gas. You know, they did it for us, right? They did it for us. And gas attendants, you know, they'd wash your windows and they'd give you a squeegee, and they used to come out in uniforms. No, they don't do that anymore, but lots of differences. People say, do you miss New Jersey? Yeah, as often as I can. And you know, ministry has its ups and downs to cause clergy a lot of stress. Burnout, they call it. And here I was, you know, I had a cold or a flu or pneumonia or I don't know what. Self-medicating is the worst thing I can do because I always add to the medication. It's not good. Well, I either had a bad stomach or something, but I was throwing up all night. And wouldn't you know, 3 days before I came down with something, I got a call from Henry Jedediah Moore. He was calling about a dear woman in the church. Her husband had died. Steve Bauer was one of our church trustees. And she only wanted me to do it, the eulogy. It couldn't be more difficult for me at that time. Of course, anytime somebody in the family passes, it's a difficult time. Even church family members. Well, I was pale as a ghost. I should have arranged to have a colleague serving, you know, near me. Well, woulda, coulda, shoulda, had, oughta, didn't. And I loved this couple. They were just wonderful people. So I whipped something together and drove myself over there to the church. And you'd all be proud of me for getting through it. Well, when the procession of cars were in place, there I was, standing right there by the hearse with Henry. As we drove to the cemetery staff were right there waiting, and things went quicker than I thought. And the graveside service was over, and I said my goodbyes, and I was really feeling poorly. Henry, you've got to get me home because I'm not feeling well. Yeah, you know, you don't look so hot. Why don't you do this? Why don't you rest in the back of the hearse so you can put your head on the pillow? Now, have anybody ever done that? Well, I took Henry's advice and I jumped in. Immediately, I couldn't help. There's no door handles. You can't get out. And the back door too. I checked. And I don't know why there's this big, thick piece of glass between the front section where live people drive and the back section where dead people ride. Well, things started to make sense to me. Why would there be any need for door handles on the inside, since no one would want a dead person having exit access anyway? Well, in addition, the windows have curtains for privacy, you know. And there I was riding along, not feeling any better. And the mistake I made was listening to Henry. He was only trying to be helpful. I understand that, but I knew I had to get out of there because, you know, your glands start to secrete. You know it's coming. There's nothing you can do to stop it, except maybe be in the right place, whatever. Well, Henry, I need to get out. Henry, I gotta get out. And he, oblivious, he didn't, you know. Finally, he stopped. Oh, it's so wonderful. He stopped. Nope. No door was opened up. Henry was getting gas. And the young man who came over, and I didn't know. I said, hey, let me out of here. I heard somebody in there. No, nothing. No, don't even think about it. Nothing to worry about. Help, get me out of here. I heard somebody. And I said, I'm going to throw up. You got to let me out now. Well, he heard me. And Henry tried to dispel it. And, you know, there I was yelling for help. He insisted. Very bewildered. And at that moment, I give one final yell for help. Help! And I shoved open the the curtains. There he was, looking right at me, and I vomited right into my hand. And he screamed, "Ah!" And he dropped the nozzle and ran away. And I looked, I was looking, to this day, I don't know what Henry said to that man. Well, anyway, now I submit to you today, that is just the kind of reaction that Dr. Martin Luther King had when he was reading Paul Tillich's The Courage to Be under his blankets, and he was shaking by flashlight. He was afraid. He knew there was a movement, but he couldn't do anything to stop it. And by the way, he wasn't, when John Englander told me this, when he was asked to be involved at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, "No, I can't be involved in any civil rights stuff." He said, "I just got here." And can you imagine? Martin Luther King turned them down. So he wasn't the originator. He just happened to be a very good participant. Well, there's a lot of times he was more afraid than he was confident. 97 years, born on the 15th of January. And I thought I might share with you something you didn't know, because there's a lot of things we don't know. You know that Martin Luther King wasn't born Martin Luther King. He was born Michael. His father was Michael Sr. Then his father went over to Europe and somehow fell in love with the works of Martin Luther the Reformer. He came back to Atlanta, and guess what? He went down to City Hall and had his name changed and his son's name changed from Michael to Martin Luther King, Sr. and Jr. And as he grew, his academic education was nothing but exceptional. At 26, he donated all of his papers to the Boston University, and he got no tax benefit from that. Now, we all know of his work. Maybe there's some things you didn't know. Did you know that he had a brother named A.D. King, died a year and a half after he died? In his pool. They said it was drowning. But the problem with that is that A.D. King got a scholarship to go to college for swimming. So how could he have drowned? Well, that was a mystery. I don't know if you knew that, but that happened on July 21st, 1969. W.E.B. Du Bois died one day before the March on Washington, and he was 95 years old, and he was going to speak. A. Philip Randolph had him on the program, died the day before. And then there was June 30th, 1974. Maybe you know of it. While playing the Lord's Prayer on the organ in the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, her husband was the minister emeritus. A man came up behind her. She was the mother of Martin Luther King Jr., and he shot her, assassinated her right there playing at the piano, and others. Then he turned the gun on himself. Can you imagine that? Well, most people didn't know that. And another little tidbit, the state of Georgia had a governor named Lester Maddox, and he was a real segregationist. This is Lester Maddox country. And they had all the signs during Dr. Martin Luther King's funeral procession, Lester Maddox country. Well, back in the day, it was just understood that white people and black people did not intermingle. Well, one day, Coretta Scott King called up this art center to help. Maybe your children would like to be exposed to this. And they said, "Oh yeah, we'd love to have your children in our class, and we don't agree with those rules. And well, come on, just come on." They had a great time. They learned a lot, and the couple felt, "Gee, that was great." And they became close to the Kings, Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott, and then their school for the arts ran on hard times. And they didn't have enough money. They thought they might have to close it. But, well, then Dr. King stepped in. And they said, "We don't even have money to pay for our baby who's going to be born soon." October 28, 1967. A girl came into the world. And Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King paid for all of the hospital expenses for that baby to be born. And the baby grew up, and the baby told the story, and we all know the name of the baby. Every one of us knows who this is. Julia Roberts. True story. Well, let me take you back to September 20th, 1958. A woman demented said, "Are you Dr. King? Martin Luther King?" And he's signing books. You know, yes, I am. And she took a letter opener out from her purse, and she stabbed him in the chest. And he almost died, right? And, yeah, I mean, there are lots of people who were involved in the nonviolent protest. The issues of justice were moving, you know, that justice grinds slowly, but it's exceedingly fine. It was great. Then they had the Montgomery bus boycott. And Rosa Parks was arrested on that bus, 2857. Oddly enough, we remember Rosa Parks violating the law. We don't remember the bus driver who had the law on his side. Well, these were steps to end the Jim Crow laws as well. Right there in the hospital, he's laying there. He received a letter from a 10th grader. "I'm a high school student, a white girl from White Plains High School in White Plains, New York." Now, my children graduated from White Plains High School in White Plains, New York. And she said, "I read about you, Dr. King, and the doctor said if you had sneezed, you would have died. And I want to thank you for not sneezing." Well, that made me think, had Dr. King sneezed and died, we wouldn't have had him for 10 years, where he was assassinated in April 4th of 1968. Now imagine, no marches through the South. There would be no I Have a Dream speech. There'd be no civil laws of 1964 or the Voting Rights Act of 1965. No Nobel Prize for Peace in 1964. By the way, he received $54,000 for that. Today they receive millions, but he gave all the money to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. There'd be no Poor People's Campaign, where they put tents up to dramatize a shameful condition of poverty in the United States. Tents between the Lincoln Memorial and Washington Monument. And there would be no prophetic witness from Dr. King about ending the war in Vietnam. Well, on November 2nd, 1983, I felt privileged to be with the Fellowship of Reconciliation. The Reverend Dr. Richard Dietz was the chairperson of that. There in Nyack, New York. We went down to Washington, D.C., stood in the Rose Garden, along with all the civil rights people that you could imagine, as President Ronald Reagan signed a day into law that on the third Monday of every month, we would celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, that no one person has ever gotten that award or that distinction. We have President's Day, but it's not the same. 49 states ratified it. And Arizona at first said no, and then they said yes. And today, you have the state of Mississippi said, we're going to celebrate a birthday, but it's going to be January 19th. What do you mean? We're going to celebrate Robert E. Lee's birthday, who was born in 1797. Well, two problems I see with that is they chose to honor, instead of Dr. King, a man who never stepped one foot in the state of Mississippi all his life. And two, West Point graduate Robert E. Lee turned down Abraham Lincoln's plea to lead the Union forces and chose instead to commit treason against our nation by these Confederate troops in the hopes of seceding from the North. The North won, but it cost 650,000 lives. Well, nice people down there. Mississippi joined the Union as the 20th state in 1817, and the Custis Lee Mansion is in Arlington National Cemetery, just above John F. Kennedy's eternal flame grave. Now, let me be clear. As we annually sought to canonize Dr. King, there were imperfections. White and black women desperately wanted intimacy with him. Dr. King slept with so many women, his staff had to shield him from them, to keep them away. And many of the staff did the same thing that he did. I don't know why he did that. Hey, I don't know why I do some of the things I do. But his last night in room number 306 at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, is now a civil rights museum. And I went there to see it. My son did a documentary on it, and he got an Emmy for it. Everything was left exactly as he left it, the moment he walked out onto that terrace, and he died. Cigarette butts in the ashtray, the newspapers all over the room, left it exactly as he left it. Now, he had classic characteristics of having a nervous breakdown. Journalists, reporters said that he was a target, so they followed him. And the FBI, headed by J. Edgar Hoover, said, oh, there's a duffel bag right outside on the other side of the building, and look at all these goodies. It must be James Earl Ray. Well, I didn't buy that. I don't buy it then, and I don't buy it now. A petty thief moved from Memphis, Tennessee to Canada, over to England, and was headed to Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. I don't think a petty thief could do that all by himself, and would have done that. At the same time, the FBI refused to admit a few little details. That they kept a very thick, active file on Dr. King and his staff, and they taped everything that he ever did in his hotel rooms. So Robert F. Kennedy signed that illegal order allowing J. Edgar Hoover to do that. Well, what you had was some pretty bad moaning, and I don't know why he did that. They were trying to find out if he had any kind of connection to communism. Right? I wonder, did Dr. King see something in America that many people didn't see? Could it be that our whole country was sick? Indeed, the whole country was sick. Consider, did you ever hold a grudge against somebody with so much anger that you became physically ill? Well, we all needed healing. It takes a lot of energy to hate somebody. And I'm deeply troubled by what hatred I see today. Dr. King did develop good respect with John F. Kennedy, the president. They were not close friends, but they had a professional, cooperative respect with each other. And his priorities, President Kennedy, was not civil rights. Well, he did endorse equality, and when you consider the vast amount of people in the country that adamantly opposed dropping the Jim Crow laws, Dr. King knew that this was the time and place in history. So he asked President Kennedy to sign a second Emancipation Proclamation. January 1st, 1863 was Lincoln's, and Dr. King asked President Kennedy to sign one on January 1st, 1963. And he felt it would be great, if, 100 years to the day, if you were to sign that, a modern and updated proclamation. Proclamation 2. But President Kennedy said no. Now, you can say a lot of things about Lyndon Johnson, but he got through some monumental civil rights. No matter what it took, his mannerisms and his arm twisting and his, beating a deadline in 1964 elections. If he failed to get that through, we would never see a civil rights bill in this country. He thought. I think he was right. Now, right now, there are roads going into mountains, like in West Virginia and all kinds of places, because he sort of made it possible for them to do development as long as he could account on their vote for civil rights. And then he appealed to legacy. Everett Dirksen was the minority Senate leader. Everett, when my name goes on that bill, your name is going to be right there next to mine. What do you say? And he's an imposing man. And most of the senators had to look up at him. And they were like, he was like cajoling them. He wouldn't let go of their collar. And well, on July 2nd, 1964, President Lyndon Johnson signed the most significant civil rights legislation ever into law. And then the Voting Rights Act, and then the Equal Housing Act of 1968. And on October 14th, 1964, Dr. King received the Nobel Prize for Peace. And they went, he and Reverend Ralph Abernathy, they went over to Oslo, Norway. And, you know, the people there thought they knew everybody. Like, well, what's the next law is coming out? We didn't know anything. They kept asking us about things. We didn't know who was gonna do what, but they thought we knew. And, you know, on that subject, amazing, Bob Dylan received the Pulitzer Prize for Literature. He never showed up, but that's okay. October 13th, 2016. Through his music, he was the voice of legitimate discontent in the 1960s. He wrote the epic songs that are still being sung, which are used by Dr. King for the movement. Now, I didn't know Bob Dylan, but I did know Pete Seeger. He was a close friend of mine. He lived in Beacon, New York, he and his wife, Tashi. And in 1957, Pete Seeger gave Dr. King the song, "We Shall Overcome." And then I was sitting in his living room one time. He said, wait, I want you to see something. You might like it. He brought out, you know, the Holy Grail, the original copy that he handed to Dr. King. And in it, it didn't say "we shall overcome." It said "we will overcome." He crossed it out and wrote "we shall overcome." Well, gee, how come you crossed it out, the will, and put in "shall"? He said, it sings better. Now, all through history, we see how people under oppressed living adopted to this song, you know. Lech Walesa in 1980, nobody could have expected that he would have led a movement called Solidarity in Poland and then become the president of the country. He didn't know if he could do it, but he did it. And then they took over when the communists said, here, you take it. They couldn't do it anymore. And the people sang "We Shall Overcome." In Tiananmen Square, on the same day of June 4th, 1989, remember that man that stopped the tanks? Deng Xiaoping gave the orders for the military tanks to overroll the brightest and best students of China. They protested for freedom. More than 7,000 of them were killed. But they made their own version of our Statue of Liberty, and they sang "We Shall Overcome." Nelson Mandela, Madiba, on February 11th, 1990, walked out of prison after 27 years. He outlasted them. And as he walked out on his terms, he was the leader of the African National Congress with Walter Sisulu. And all those years, and when he came out, right there at the front door, the people sang, "We shall overcome." And then there's Brother Martin and the movement, and so many times they'd have to stand up, even if they stand alone. The people sang, "We shall overcome." Which leads us to today. I thought about what was I going to say. I don't need to say anything. You already know it. I'm not going to ever hold captive an audience of this intelligence when you already know what could be said. How many years can a mountain exist before it washes into the sea? How many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? How many times can we turn our heads pretending we don't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. And here we are in 2026, more than 70 years after Dr. King's work began. And it's true what Dylan wrote. The times are changing. And both through the words and the song, "Such a Dream" still speaks to our future. So many years later, causing us to rejoice, standing up even when we stand alone. And Fannie Lou Hamer, who was a great civil rights activist, who was denied entrance into the Atlantic City Convention in 1964. It's hard to be an activist. And she said, I'm just so sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, when we celebrate Dr. King, we often overlook the unsung heroes of this movement. The primary one has to be, in my mind, Coretta Scott King, his wife. Everyone advised him not to come out against the war in Vietnam. His denomination, his staff, his close friends, everybody said, don't do it. You'll be committing political and professional suicide. Lyndon Johnson's our friend. Why would you do that? And then he said things like, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And an unjust law is no law at all. And so on April 4th, 1967, in the Riverside Church, a church that was built for Harry Emerson Fosdick by John Rockefeller Jr., Dr. King came out publicly and opposed the war in Vietnam. So with your permission, I would like to give you your homework assignment today. They were 8 clergy when he was arrested in Birmingham. They put out a full-page ad in the Birmingham Press. Get out of town. We need you to leave. We might agree with some of your ideas, but your methods are ruining what we're trying to effectuate change. We're trying, and you're messing it all up. He's heard that before. So on the corners of newspapers and with pencils, because they wouldn't let him have any writing material, the newspapers were brought in by his lawyers as well. The pencils. I don't usually write back, he said. I hardly have time to write back to anybody. I wouldn't be able to do anything else if I just wrote back. But I'm writing back to you, 8 clergy, 2 of which were Methodists, by the way. I'm writing back to you. And I want to ask you, what would you say to your daughter when she wanted to go to the amusement park in Funtown and she's not allowed entrance because of the color of her skin? Well, that was a letter from a Birmingham jail. And it's considered by many to be the most profound document of civil rights ever written. We know about Dr. King, but I don't think we've ever read much of what he ever said or wrote or thought. He said that the real threat to our country is not the KKK or the Black Panthers, the ones on the fringes, but that group in the middle. The group in the middle that takes neither a yay or a nay position on anything, as long as they don't have to be involved and they don't have to be part of the problem or part of the issue at all. Those people, mediocre in the middle, feel that more comfortable neither taking a yay or a nay position. My question is, where was Billy Graham when all this was happening? Where was Robert Schuller? Where was Norman Vincent Peale? When I went to seminary, we used to say Paul is appealing, but Peale is appalling. So please read, if you will, letter from a Birmingham jail. Where were they? Well, I think these ministers were hiding out in white America. Who was marching, you may ask? Well, it was those Unitarians that were there. He called them my cerebral bunch. Yeah, he would pick up the phone, and they would just go to wherever he was to join him. Well, what's our future? They were on the march because they knew something. There will be joy in the morning. What is our future? Whatever positions we take on a whole myriad of red hot button issues, and I mean there are many. We remember the birthday of a man we all know through his accomplishments. Can you imagine that night before he died, what the congregation thought of that last sermon? Loud thunder and lightning outside. They thought there were bullets, but they were just the crackle of the thunder. And it was there where he said, I have seen the promised land. Well, I don't know I've said many times, I don't know if J. Edgar Hoover had anything to do with the assassination of Dr. King. I don't have enough information. But like you, I heard some different theories. I don't believe the story of the bag and the doorway and all. I just can't believe it because it just doesn't make sense. But if J. Edgar Hoover did have anything to do with it, what would be the lesson? You can kill the dreamer, but you will never kill the dream. Our beliefs tell us in the Unitarian Universalist tradition that to have faith, all we need to do is act with faith. And to have justice, all we need to do is to act with justice. I must say, I still believe that there's goodness in the hearts of people. Although we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. Thank you, my Lord.